Amber's work is one of our most recent acquisitions. It was acquired last November as part of the Spectrum auction, and I've never seen people so very excited about one of our acquisitions, and it's been one of our most popular pieces. It is part of our current exhibit, The F Word, We Mean Female, and I want to thank our exhibition sponsor, which is SunTrust Bank, now Truist Bank. And I want to thank our ArtWise sponsor for sponsoring this talk, who is Martha Mackey. We really appreciate the generosity of all our sponsors. We can't do these things without them. Now, let me tell you a little bit about her. Amber has been working with glass for over 15 years. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts in three-dimensional design with a concentration in glass from Salisbury University, and then her Master's in Fine Art from Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia, which is where she now teaches. She has gotten numerous awards, but one of the most prestigious is the Rakow Commission from the Corning Museum of Glass, which she got a few years ago. She has exhibited around the country. As I mentioned, she is in our collection, but she's also in the collection of the Shanghai Museum of Glass, the De Young Museum of Fine Art in San Francisco, the Speed Museum in Louisville, and several others. So I am so very thrilled that you joined us, Amber, and I'll turn it over to you now to share everything with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Nandini. And thank you so much for having me. I wish I could be there with you guys in person because the museum looks so beautiful on that water and everything. It looks just like such an awesome place. But I'm coming to you live here from my studio in Philadelphia. And it's kind of exciting because this studio, the studio that I'm sitting in now, I actually it's just become like a working place for me within the last really like maybe 5 months. So I had been looking for a building in Philly that for a very long time where I could actually have my studio and my living space. So where I'm working out of now is a building that actually used to be an old corner deli in Philly. And the upstairs is a little apartment where I live. And then the downstairs here, I converted the deli part of the building into my studio. So I work down here, and it really worked out very well with this whole pandemic thing because I'm pretty much down here by myself all day long. And I'm self-contained unit, which is pretty nice. So what I'm gonna do is just show you some images of some work. Since this is a little bit shorter presentation, I'm gonna show you kind of like some newer pieces within the last couple years. And then I'm gonna switch to my phone because it's more mobile, and I'm gonna take you on like a little studio tour of my downstairs studio here, and then set you up so you can watch a little bit of a flame working demo. And feel free to ask any questions about the glass process or anything like that as you go along. I can talk while I'm demoing too, so I'm not sure how familiar with any of you are with glass making process, but there's a lot of different glass making processes. And the one that I specialize in is called flame working, which you'll get to see a demo of today. So I'm just gonna share my screen here and show you just go through a few of my images of my work. Okay, so this is the piece that you now have at the Hunter Museum. And this piece is called Diamond and Milk. And so basically all of the work that I make is from, basically all the material that I use is all old vintage glass and cullet. So cullet is basically, I'm going to show you a piece of it because I'm here, which is nice. But it basically is just glass that in a factory, in a press glass factory, they would, all the scraps that were created during the process, they would basically throw into a pile, and that was acted as just like the refuse of the process. So basically what I do for my work is I take this old material, this old refuse from these old press glass factories that most of them are no longer in existence. And I take this, remelt it, and make it into my own work. So when you're in person in the piece, or when you're looking at the piece at the museum, all of the like flowers and feathers and florals and all of those things you see, those are pieces that I have made with the old glass. So basically I take this old material, I melt it down, and I remake the shapes using different tools, which you'll get to see today. So all of those flowers and leaves and all those things are handmade, but then I intersperse original elements from the original material. So in the piece, if you look at it closely, you'll see these are some of the elements that are in there. I'm pretty sure that there's an old hobnail lampshade in there. So that kind of bumpy texture is a texture that the old pressed glass manufacturers would call hobnail. And I'm sure that a lot of you might be familiar with that texture. And then I know that there's also one of these dishes on the left in there as well. And then also a question I get to about that particular look of the glass is that all of that, for that piece, all of the glass is either sandblasted or acid etched. So it has like a matte finish to the glass. So it takes a lot longer to produce that quality or to get that finish on the glass. It's a whole nother step. But I really love the way it looks, especially in white. I don't do it to all my pieces, but I really think that with the white glass, it makes it look like porcelain, and it really kind of makes all the pieces kind of pop out. So one of the reasons I started using this glass is that I taught at Salem Community College for a little while, which is in southern New Jersey. And one of my students at the time was a farmer, and she brought in this set of dishes, which looked just like the ones on the left there. And they were a set of dishes from this company called the Indiana Glass Factory. And the pattern is called the Colony Harvest pattern. So she's like, these are so ugly. You can have them. Someone in my family put them in there a long time ago. So I started using them. The color was really beautiful. The glass, you know, especially when it's sandblasted, had almost like this bluish tint to it. And I started doing some research on the material and found out that it's extremely abundant in thrift stores and antique markets. And the reason why is because it was a product that you could purchase through the redemption of S&H green stamps, which some people maybe would remember these. I remember putting these in the booklets with my grandmother. And it was basically like nowadays your airline points. So a lot of people had this glass because it was one of these things you could get through your green stamps. And another interesting kind of thing I found out when I started going to my cullet yard, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well, I started finding a lot of these stamps. So if you see right in the center of this basket, there's kind of like this little bit of a leaf shaped stamp. And what that is called is a basket handler stamp. So when I was going through these barrels of old broken glass, I was finding these little stamps. And what I found was that, and through some research found out that at the factory, which a lot of this glass I get came from a now closed factory called the Fenton Glass Factory, which was in West Virginia. At the factory, each of the main gaffers or the head glass blowers at the factory would have their own signature stamp. And on the website, they had all of the old gaffer stamps. So for example, John Smith would have this particular stamp from 1963 to 1975. So I was essentially able to start dating the glass that I was using through these stamps. This is a newer piece that I made, actually also using the white glass. And this piece was from a factory called the Westmoreland Glass Factory. And the pattern is called the Old Quilt pattern. So this piece is called Old Quilt Undresser Tray. And then I also make some pieces that are more like diorama style, like more storytelling. And a lot of these kind of are a little bit personal, maybe have a little bit more of a personal narrative for me. This piece is called Bridesmaid's Forest, and I'll show you this detail here. So I use this bridesmaid's figurine a lot, which that was what she was called. That's an original piece. And I kind of thought of her as me getting a little bored with the wedding and going off on her own adventure. So there's a lot of different characters in there. There's a deer, turtle, whale, a snail, and a duck in there. So those are all original. Oh, and a butterfly up there too. And then all of the other pieces in there, such as the flowers and vines and all that stuff, are pieces that I make out of that old color. This is a piece I made in a few years ago. And I'm really excited because this piece is actually has just been acquired by the Mad Museum in New York. So hopefully you guys will, if anyone's ever in New York and at the Mad, this will be around there if it's on display. And this piece is titled Dance of the Pacific Coast Highway at Sunset. And it's almost like this theater stage with these two ballerinas kind of dancing on this coast with the water and the sun setting. That's a little bit better image. And at the Fenton factory, they had people who were hand painting all of these things. So it's kind of cool because I actually got a note from the woman who painted the little picture in this piece. Someone sent it to her, and she sent me a pretty cool note about how she's excited that it's in my piece now. She did such a beautiful job painting that floral on that picture that I had to use it in there. So, you know, how I work is basically I go to these cullet yard and search for the colors, and I find the colors, and then I start doing research about what was originally produced in there and if it would work in like in one of my pieces. So I found a barrel, like a 200-pound barrel of this rosaline color, and I started making my shapes out of it, and then started kind of like searching and searching for what I wanted to use that was original. So I found these ballerinas and really loved their movement and their dress. This is the same color called rosaline, which is a color that I use a lot. And this piece is called Bridesmaid's Search for the Desert Rose. And a lot of these pieces, you know, deal with, you know, just personal kind of symbolism and, you know, search for love, spirituality, thinking about totems in your life or symbols in your everyday. This piece is called Young Love Resting in Gray Meadow. And I actually found these two horses when I was teaching at Penland quite a few years ago. They were just sitting on top of a barrel of this glass they had. And they sat on my shelf, kind of like all this stuff is sitting on my shelf now for a while before they ended up getting used in a piece. So I collect a lot of stuff. People give me a lot of stuff. I get a box now almost once a month from someone who I've never met. It says, hey, I have this like broken thing. It's old. It's historic. Do you want it? It's broken. I don't want to get rid of it, but I feel bad throwing it away. Can you use it? So it's pretty cool. And so now I take other people's kind of history and kind of wrap it into my work. This piece is called Saucian Crown Tuscan. And this Crown Tuscan color was a really kind of very popular color at one point in history. Kind of the Art Nouveau period. So this piece is the conch shell is actually original vase, and I made all of the kind of tentacles coming out of here. These are some kind of different pieces I made for a show I had at the Fuller Craft Museum a couple years ago. And I don't know if any of you have ever remembered, but these, the hands were actually like an old jewelry stand. And what I do is I take these into the hot shop and heat and manipulate the fingers to get them to kind of pinch and move a little bit, because originally the hand just kind of goes up like that. And then the plates, the piece is titled Hands and Handkerchiefs. So the handkerchiefs or the milk glass plates were manipulated in a kiln. So kind of stretched and pulled till they look like fabric in the kiln. They get to that perfect temperature, and then I stop the kiln. These are just some other. This piece is called Snail Passing Through the Garden of Inanna, and I used that same snail. The Fenton factory actually had an auction of all of their old molds a few years ago. And I went through this catalog of like online catalog of like 20,000 molds to try to find some that I wanted. And I actually found that snail, and now I own the mold, which is really pretty cool. So I can get those produced now out of that mold. There was only 2 of them in existence. So this was an original piece, but not from the mold, but I didn't create it. So, and what I found later is that I've used this vase a few times with this goddess on it. And I found that the story of this it was actually produced during the time of the dancer Isadora Duncan. And it was made in her resemblance. So a lot of the molds that these factories used would be passed down from one factory to another. And you have to kind of like go through the rabbit hole to find the story of them or where they're originally from. I should probably move along here. These are some newer pieces. I love the jadeite color. It's just such a beautiful color. This is my newest piece. I actually just finished this. And this piece is called Hen Collecting All of Her Ova. And this hen is kind of sitting in this nautilus dish, like just surrounded by her eggs, and she's not giving any away or giving any of them up. So this would be like what it would look like at the cullet yard that I go to. This is my friend Sarah. So that is what that colored chocolate looks like when I purchase it. And that's kind of what it looked like after they would finish a run in the factory. They would throw it in this pile. I collect this, and then I take it back to my studio and I remelt it and use it. So this is some of the things that would have originally been produced in that color. This was actually a really popular color. It was originally invented in 1901. And it had a time that it was very popular. Can't imagine anyone having this in their house anymore, but this is another piece I made out of that chocolate color. This is a newer jadeite piece. And this is a snail I had reproduced out of my mold now. It's a big mountain of milk glass. And I actually just went here a couple weeks ago, and you know, they still have glass. It's an interesting place. I kind of have to go and really search through it. The last time I was there, I found this whole, like, probably 200-pound barrel of all of these colored pucks that were all their test samples from the factory, which was really pretty incredible for glass nerds like me to see, like, you know, 20 years of color samples, and they were all labeled with like how long the melt was and what year, what color, all this stuff. So that was kind of a big score for me. I didn't take the whole barrel, but I might go back for more. And I think that's it for this. Let me, okay, so now I'm gonna try to switch here and take you on a little tour of the studio. Okay, so I might just pop off this one for a minute and I'll pop right back on, okay?
In the meantime, could I ask you a couple of questions we've gotten?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you're choosing what you're creating, are you do you have a predetermined sketch, or do you think, oh, I found a lot of this cinnamon chocolate glass and this is where I'm going with it? What is your kind of thought process there?
Well, I do usually what it starts out with is like a trip to that yard, or where because I need a kind of like a bunch of the material to start with. So I usually kind of try to find the material first, and then I start to kind of like look and see what is available for that. But also sometimes it starts with like a character. Like I found that hen in the last piece and I really loved that hen. Oh, here we go.
Another question we got was, why are you using a monochromatic palette?
So. Good question. Okay, I'm gonna leave here.
So yeah, the monochromatic palette, it kind of started off as it started out as a technical kind of thing, because basically, like, all of the colors and all these different kinds of glass are not technically compatible. Meaning that if you try to, let's say, for example, you find a piece of glass, here's a swan that I'm using, okay? And I want to melt that and fuse it to like a beer bottle I found. That doesn't actually technically work because they will split apart. So almost all these different colors that I'm finding and using are actually technically not compatible if you were to melt them together. So that's how it started, but then it ended up being more of an aesthetic decision. It kind of my work is already so like busy visually that I think if I would also add all these different colors, it would just be like this flat. You wouldn't even kind of see what you're looking at.
Right.
So that's kind of like how it started for me. I'm gonna take you on a little tour here and turn you around. So this is kind of like what my studio looks like now. All of this big shelf thing here was actually built in when it was the deli. This was the original piece that I first made in my style when I was in graduate school. So I just kind of collect all these different things. This is a frame for a piece I'm working on right now. And this is like this woman that's going to go in this frame. It was a soap dish. And I'm pretty excited about her. And then these two swans are going to go into it too. The piece is going to actually kind of looking like you know, those old fashioned carnival rides that was like the Tunnel of Love. It's going to have like this tunnel coming out of it. So that's going to be that. And then, yeah, sitting before. And then here's kind of like a lot of the different materials that I use. I just got some of this new like red orange color. And I just got this whole barrel of this new like kind of swirly white blue. And as you can see, like in this barrel that I just got, there's like, you know, this is like a little boat. Here's like a car I found, which is pretty cool. And then, oh yeah, so then I also got this new color, which like, this looks so cool, but then once you like melt it and swirl it up, it ends up looking like this. Can you see that? Kind of does. I actually really love the way this looks. Yeah, so this is kind of like what my material looks like. Yeah. So, and then back here this is like a big crazy thing I made in grad school. This is my bench where I work. So, yeah, I'm just going to use my kiln and my torch. So I use what's called a Carlisle CC, which is like a flame working torch. So yeah, I'm going to set you guys up kind of like right next to the torch here. And so I'll just do a quick little demo for you guys here. Most of the tools that I use are like tweezers. My main tool is actually a set of bonsai shears. So I have like a couple of these bonsai shears. So, I still wear these glasses, but hopefully you guys will be able to see without them. I'll try to hold up what I'm making so that you can kind of see. So I'm using some white glass actually, because I thought that would be good so you guys can. I'm just kind of preheating it right now, and then once it's preheated, I'll bring it more in this area so you can see what I'm doing with the tool. There you go. So right now I'm just kind of getting it into like a molten shape. So basically just like a ball, like a molten ball of glass. And then I use my tools to shape it. The two clear glass kind of handles that I'm using are basically just that. We call them punties, but they act as handles to kind of hold the glass while I'm shaping it. Okay, so now that it's nice and hot, I'm going to cut it. And so I'm making like one of my feather things, but I make a lot of these when I work. I'm going to do it up here so you can see it a little better. Sometimes that happens. Pull it a little bit. Like that. So I think I might take this off and I'll make one other one and then we'll see if anybody has any questions. I get a little nervous in demo, but it's funny. It's like I do this all day long, but then when I know someone's watching, I get, I get nervous. So silly. This is a big piece of green. So this would be the green color like in that bridesmaid's forest piece. So I think I'm going to make like a ribbon, like one of these ribbons, because they're kind of fun to watch made. I see the question. So how I attach the different pieces, I do it in a bunch of different ways depending on the piece. Sometimes they're fused together, so fused in a kiln. And sometimes they're attached more like flower arranging, so a cold construction. method. All right. So now I get this big ball. I'm going to make a ribbed one. So I have this kind of press that has these little ridges in it, you see? That's it. Flatten it all out. Sometimes I leave it like this because these are kind of cool too, but I'm going to stretch this one. Woo! These are cool. Big, big ribbon. Yep. I'm going to put it all in that kiln. So my kiln is at about degrees, and basically when I'm done, I leave it at about 1,000 degrees all day, and then when I'm done, it comes down to temperature. So it comes down very slowly to temperature. So I kind of like in the beginning of the day, I like stack up a bunch of glass in the front, and then by the time I'm done, all those little chunks and pieces are made into, you know, all these different parts, you know, so parts and pieces, and then I send the kiln down for the night, and it goes through a process called annealing, which is where the glass kind of comes down slow into to room temperature. So, does anyone have any other questions for me?
Yeah. So we have a few that came in.
Yeah.
So someone wanted to know if you needed to wear gloves or a respirator to do this kind of work.
I don't wear gloves, so it's you know, occasionally I'll get a little burn on my hand. Mostly if I accidentally touch like a hot tool or something like that, or like a hot piece of glass or something like that. But no, we don't really wear gloves when we flame work. As far as ventilation, I don't wear a respirator, but I do have an exhaust fan. You can't see it, but it's right in front of me. So I exhaust when I'm working. I actually had it turned on really low when you guys were working, but normally it would be definitely louder. And it exhausts all that straight out. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all fascinating. I think I could watch you all day making these pieces.
Thanks.
We've had several people ask, how long does it take you to construct one of your pieces, especially those larger ones?
It takes a while. Like, usually I'm working on like, I like to kind of switch it up. Like even just switching colors kind of like gives me something different in my day. So I'm usually working on a couple different pieces at once. Um, but generally the larger pieces take a few months. Sometimes how I work is that I make glass, make glass for sometimes months, because even all those little beads, those little pearls in that, I make all those by hand. So that stuff it takes a long time. But then once I have like the frame ready and all the glasses ready, that's a more fluid and quicker process. It's like putting it together, which is more like just an intuitive arranging. That's kind of my fun day. So, couple days for those large pieces. Sometimes I'll be making glass for like months, but then the putting it together process will I'll like just get in there and do it in like a few days. At least the major part of it.
So do you often have, for example, Diamond and Milk, the one at the museum, and you're making it's a fairly large piece, and you're making a lot. I mean, it has hundreds of pieces in it. If when you come to the end, if it doesn't fit, you reuse them for other pieces, or do you have it mapped out so well that you know exactly how it's all going to come together?
Yeah, no, I definitely have some left over. And also like what usually happens at the end, like towards the end, I'll be like, oh, I need like 5 more of this one, so I'll have to like make that specific part. Um, but generally I have a lot left. Like, I don't know if you noticed, I was um, showing you my shelving unit. On the bottom of it, I have just bins of like plastic Tupperwares of pieces that, so and I have them all color categorized. So I use a lot of the same colors because that's what's kind of available. So if I don't use all my jadeite pieces for this one I'm making now, I'll save them for the next one. It might not be this year. It might be in like 5 years, but I'll have them. So.
So we have one final question, which is a terrific question to end with. Where do you plan on heading with your style and techniques in the future, and what kinds of future projects do you have on the burner?
Well, right now, I'm really excited about this new jadeite piece actually, because the frame style is one that I haven't used before. My boyfriend's actually a metal worker, and like we kind of collaborated frame. So I'm pretty excited about the one I'm making right now. And then after I'm finished this one, well, actually, this jadeite piece is going in a show at R & Company, which is called Objects 2020, and it's kind of an anniversary show for a show that was done. That was an original object show. So I'm kind of excited about this show. It's like an overview of kind of some crafts right now, not just glass. And then after that, I'm getting ready for an exhibition at the Wheaton, the Museum of Glass in New Jersey. And Wheaton has a massive collection of historic glass, probably one of the biggest collections of historic glass maybe in the country. So, and they also have a studio, and they have a giant collection of press molds and presses. So I'm kind of excited to do something at the museum and have, like my work, which is like a contemporary version of what they have. And some of the parts I use in my work, they actually have displayed in the museum. So I'm pretty excited about that. You know, definitely the last few months have, for everyone, have just been so weird. And, you know, for the majority of the pandemic so far, I was actually just renovating my studio. So it was kind of a perfect time to do it, but I've just gotten back to work now in the last like 2 months. I wasn't able to make that much work for a little while, but I guess no one was during at the time. So I'm really excited about the projects I'm working on now, and I have some ideas for some pieces in the future. I really want to get more like I have ideas for flatter ones, and then also ones that are like really more dimensional, so they don't have the whole frame and all that kind of thing. You know, it's always a process of like finding someone that I can work with that does carpentry and things like that, because that's not something that I do. I'm really just a glassmaker. So you know, working with other people that can kind of help me facilitate and figure out my ideas, how they're actually going to be logistically put together, is a whole process in itself. So I'm pretty excited about some new things right now that I finally have my studio all finished. I feel like it's a new beginning in a way, you know.
Well, we can't wait to see what you come up with. I think we'll all be following you in various ways, especially here at the museum. So thank you, Amber, for joining us and sharing so much of your time and flame working those pieces. It was really fascinating. And I want to thank all the people who attended. We all appreciate it at the museum. And we hope you'll come see the work in person, because nothing compares to actually experiencing Diamond and Milk in person. But thank you again, Amber. We're so thrilled to learn from you.
Thank you guys so much. I can't wait to visit the museum. It looks like such a beautiful place, and I'm so happy my piece is with you guys. So thank you everyone for coming.